What are your predictions, let's say, for the next 12 months? I'll start with you, if that's the right way.
It's just there'll be more maturity in the way that people approach the technology. You know, if we're focusing on the technology, not, you know, use cases like crypto and stuff like that. But for me, it's a process of regulation and education. That is the most important thing here. And I think it's making businesses understand that the technology is not something that you need to be scared of. You know, when I go in and talk to businesses or CEOs or whatever, the first thing they're like, you know, it's like this mystical thing that you feed at night and stuff. You know, you just got to make them realise that it's something that can actually enhance the way that they do their business rather than something that threatens it. I think once you get them on a path where you start teaching them about the benefits, then, you know, people are a lot more, they'll look for easy use cases, like where can they reduce costs and you know, losses in their business. And once you've got them on that road, then I think they become a bit more aggressive in what they want to solve, and it's probably what will happen.
Sure. I'm just thinking, like, do you ever have, for example, like that perceived risk from the industries, from clients? They understand the benefits, they understand where it's at, but they, for example, think, well, we have legacy systems, we have a lot of red tape, we understand it, it's just too difficult for us to get there. I mean, there are situations like that, I'm sure. Would you like to comment on that?
That is actually what's happening with the banks. They cannot risk ripping out their systems because that will destabilize them and it will put them in a topsy-turvy. So they have created an ability to take some of the processes, such as reconciliation, and use blockchain for that. I think that there is an opportunity as startups to be able to provide solutions to them to hook in, but eventually they will try and own it also, because those 50-year-old systems will die at some point. Right. My prediction is, you know, we were talking IoT. I think that there needs, you know, actually blockchain is easier for standardization than IoT is. There's so many pieces being created. Those little, I'm scared of the rage of the machine. Right. Happening, because we don't know who's controlling them. How are we making sure that they are getting the updates that they need to have? And I think that there needs to be more conformity and governance in that space for us to then be able to use them effectively and to really benefit from that.
Yeah, sure, Philip.
Yeah, I think in the banking, you're absolutely right. It needs to be working together, the startups, the ones who have the solutions, working with those who know their industry inside out to really work it together. I think someone asked me about, as we were talking about supply chain solution, and they were saying, well, do people need to rip up their system? I said, well, no, because the problem is a lot of people can't prove their supply chain at the moment. So the systems aren't there, either aren't there or they're not that brilliant. So they're willing to look at the IoT devices together with the blockchain capability to put in a new capability. Now, yes, does the data need to link in with their existing big data analytics? Of course it does, to be able to show that big, wider piece. But I don't think it's always a case of ripping something out to put something else in. Sometimes it's new deployment work in synergy with what's there already. I think that's where some of the quick wins and real power added value come from. Absolutely, especially in IoT, which is a new area, let's be honest. It hasn't hit full maturity yet.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of supply chain, it's sometimes really difficult to find the use case for supply chain because you have to, you know, give a return of investment. So it is what you're looking for in the first instance. And, you know, for companies that are, you know, driven by margin and, you know, their margins are being slashed all the time, it's a lot harder to justify the expenditure of finding new ways of doing supply chain because it's just seen as a cost until you get a return. But, you know, for other like luxury items, I can definitely see it. So when you know when you're selling, you know, sex in fabric or cars or something like that, it's a lot easier to justify why you're enhancing the supply chain because it can give you data that allows you opportunities to sell on a different level once you get to that point, so you can understand it. But yeah.
I mean, just on that, I mean, everyone wants to now know fair trade. They want to know their items aren't coming from sweatshops. So that's not just a new value add, that's an expectation. And then you can really monetize that. We can prove that all our bananas are fair trade. That's
but
really
not only the fair trade, there is actually ability now to use that data. So we know that data is truth. We know what actually went to the bin and what actually made it. Then you can start looking at using already existing instrument to create liquidity into the supply chain. and by really looking at how can you basically have investment into the performance. That's something that's already being done. But how, sometimes they don't want to touch it because they don't understand the supply chain, what is the true value. So I think that there are opportunity for better instruments, and so I beg to differ also on to the mass number. If I want to provide to a farmer inputs, I'd like to know what's happening and being able to help him get to better yield. And if the yields are not getting there, being able to get the insurance and assuring that the cost is maintained. So there are a lot of opportunity by being able to create trust in data that we can explore.
IoT devices are out there today, so why do we need blockchain? I think one point we were saying is that there's trust in that information that's captured, really. Do you want to expand a bit on that, Philip?
Yeah, so at the moment the IoT devices are out there, so every telco's got their IoT devices, they go out and do a specific job. This world we're going to is interoperability. So you need to be able to have devices now talking to each other. Something happens, so let's say you've got a car going into a toll booth. The car's got a black box, knows it's going to a toll booth. The toll booth reads the registration number of the car and then it automatically charges the owner of that car to use the toll booth. So that's IoT devices from different providers all interacting, and therefore you have there needs to be trust between untrusted parties, and that's the difference. So we're going to this world where there needs to be this interoperability in the smart city space, whereas before we haven't. As IoT device has done one thing, that's fine, it's trusted, it's one thing, but now they're all talking, and that's where blockchain really needed this new world.
Sure. Do you have any thoughts yourself?
No, that was perfect.
I agree.
So I'd like to ask if there is any live examples that you'd like to talk about of IoT and blockchain that you think are particularly well fitting, particularly well suited, and are hitting what the use case was for.
Sorry, we're going to be tracking mangoes. And in the box, you will have an IoT device which is going to keep track of the temperature and also the location. And it's tied onto the QR code for that box. So you're measuring that the temperature is always kept to what it is. And that's something which is already there. But however, what will happen is that when the temperature hits above what it's supposed to be, so it's too hot, you are going to throw this or say it's no longer good enough. So therefore, at that point, you're also going to ding the person who's responsible for carrying and keeping the temperature. So this is where IoT is coming in and working with the blockchain to provide that trust into the data.
Do you guys have any other use cases?
Do you know, one of the downsides of being a supplier in the B2B space, having to white label everything, is that you're NDA to your eyeballs. So the answer is yes, but I can't talk about them.
Do you want me to give you an example of one, or one that I'm actually working on?
Go on.
No, I can't, because like you, I can't. I think the one for me, the one great example is turning a car into an IoT device. So you've seen Build Your Dreams with VeChain in terms of what they're doing. So essentially they track your car, the way that you drive your car, and then you get rewarded with credits at the end of your journeys. It's based on when you take your car for a service, how fast you drive your car, which suppliers you get your parts from, and the way that you run that car, you just get rewarded with credits, which scan a QR code on your mobile and you get to spend them. So that gives you an idea of how far this is probably going to go.
Great, thanks. I saw one more person had a question. No? All right, well, we'll have to conclude there. Thanks very much for attending. Can we just sum up with one key message, a few key messages that you want to get across to the crowd? That's it, very short and brief, about blockchain and IoT. Anything you want, very quickly, because we're running out of time. Each of you.
The future is coming. I said the future is coming. We are going to have that moment of, what's that show? Shoot, I can't remember now. The future, it said we were going to have cell phone. Star Trek.
True. Wayne?
For me, it's just, I mean, if you're a business, don't be scared of it. Just embrace it and just give it a go. That's really the message I'd like to get across.
Yeah, and lastly, make it focused on your pain points, use case specific. There's a lot of waffle, a lot of nonsense out there. You can do a lot of good, but you need to focus on your pain points, real world use cases, and then you can have a really good impact on your business.
Fantastic. Can we have a round of applause for our panelists, please? Thank you.